Hi everyone, this is Traci Fenton, founder of WorldBlu, and today we're going to be talking about freedom at work, the leadership strategy for transforming your organization and our world. Real leaders know how to motivate and rally their teams and organizations to break through levels of performance that they never could have achieved on their own, no matter what is going on in the world around them. They inspire confidence and respect, treat others with fairness and dignity, and inspire them to strive for their highest potential. Yet during times of rapid growth, upheaval, crisis, or recession, even the most enlightened CEOs and top leaders can end up reverting to a style of leadership that leaves a wake of resentment, hurt, short-sighted decisions, and emotional turmoil in their team or organization. This is a style of leadership that is based in fear and control, that looks like withholding critical information, shutting people out of key decisions, greed, control, and even worse. Have you ever experienced this style of leadership before? I know many of us have. As a result of all this fear at work, people often feel disengaged, undervalued, treated unfairly, hurt, and disappointed. Because at the end of the day, whether it's the global economy, quarterly earnings, shifting societal views, or the market, the reality is that any team or organization will win or lose based on the leadership style of their top leaders. And while many CEOs and top leaders simply default into a fear and control-based style of leadership when times are difficult, or even when they're not, extraordinary, highly effective leaders step up to lead in a very different way. The top CEOs and top leaders that we've worked with at leading brands around the world, such as the WD-40 Company, Zappos, DaVita, Menlo Innovations, HCL Technologies, Wyden, Mindvalley, and hundreds more, know how to inspire innovation, leadership, and peak performance in their teams and organizations during good as well as challenging times, empowering them to reach an even higher level of growth and success. So, what's the distinction between the leaders who win compared to the leaders who flop? They lead with freedom at work. What exactly does it mean to lead with freedom at work rather than fear at work? Well, first, let's take a look at some of the symptoms of fear at work in most teams or organizations. Fear at work looks like employees who are stressed and anxious about managing their work and their work-life balance, making it challenging to get them to go the distance. Fear at work looks like people being so afraid of failing that it's hard for anyone to find the courage to act decisively. Fear at work fuels ongoing concerns about money, clients, investors, the competition, and the future, piling fear upon fear, forcing everyone into a fear-induced death spiral that is almost impossible to climb out of. Because the big difference between slowly killing your soul, your team, or your organization versus actually building a high-performing world-class team or organization really comes down to how you lead yourself and others each and every day. Leading with freedom at work means that you know how to handle your employees, vendors, customers, and investors' fears with unshakable confidence, putting them at ease. Leading with freedom at work means that you look at every crisis as an opportunity to rise to the challenge and bring out the best in everyone. Leading with freedom at work means that you have the courage and confidence to make far-sighted, smart decisions that weak, fear-based leaders simply miss. At any given moment, we as leaders must make the conscious choice between leading ourselves and others with freedom at work or fear at work. Which style of leadership will you choose? Many CEOs and top leaders think they are running a great team or organization that operates in freedom instead of fear and control. Yet they are still experiencing problems such as low levels of revenue growth and high levels of drama, low engagement, high turnover, and an inability to retain top talent. And the funny thing is that most leaders don't think this has anything to do with them, but it does. It starts with the enemy within that compromises our ability to lead well, and it negatively ripples out from there. That's what the top CEOs and leaders of the organizations we've worked with understand. And it's this understanding that allows them to not just survive, but truly thrive each day. So how do they do it? They lead with freedom at work rather than fear in all that they do. And in this presentation, I will show you how to close the gap between where you are today to where you want to be with just one word: freedom. Ultimately unlocking the leadership strategy that will transform your team or organization and our world for the better. But first, who am I to teach you this? Well, I founded WorldBlu in 1997, and we have worked with CEOs and top leaders in companies such as Zappos, WD-40, Mindvalley, DaVita, Pandora, Hulu, GE Aviation, and hundreds more, with clients in over 100 countries, representing over $30 billion in annual revenue. I've been recognized in Inc. magazine as a top 50 leadership innovator. I've earned the Game Changer Award for top results in shaping the world. I was named as a 2020 World Changing Woman in Conscious Business winner. And I'm a Marshall Goldsmith top 100 coach. I've spoken around the world, including at Harvard, Yale, the US Naval Academy. I've done a TEDx. I've spoken several times at South by Southwest, at the CIA, and many more places to leaders from over 100 countries. And our work has been recognized in Fortune, Forbes, Fast Company, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur, BBC, NPR, and hundreds of other media outlets all over the world, and in over 36 books. Now, let's take a look at the top 7 challenges facing top leaders like you today, and how you can close the gap from where you are now to where you want to be, with more, not less, freedom in the way you live, lead, and work. Okay, challenge or myth number 1. Fear at work is a great leadership motivator. Well, the truth is, fear at work gives leaders tunnel vision. Fear is scientifically proven to shut down the peripheries of your brain, literally making you myopic so that you make bad and short-sighted decisions when dealing with problems and challenges as a leader. Since fear causes us to make bad decisions, you end up wasting money, energy, resources, and even valuable relationships at the exact moment when you should be figuring out how to save, grow, and make even more money. A CEO or top leader's job is to lower the level of fear in your team or organization on a daily basis, and especially during challenging times, in order to create the optimal conditions for everyone's success. Why does this matter? Well, because according to a study published in the Harvard Business Review, 95% of CEOs say that their top executives have a limited view of their own fears. This lack of self-awareness leads to a lack of honest conversations, political game playing, silo-based thinking, and a lack of accountability and bad behaviors that ripple throughout an organization, especially during challenging times. Therefore, CEOs and top leaders must have the skills and tools to lower, not escalate, the level of fear in their teams or organizations, so that their employees do not become mesmerized by the fear, leading to knee-jerk reactions that further cripple your team or business. Fear-based thinking pulls the people you are leading down into a no-way-out fear-based spiral that destroys morale and further erodes your culture. That's why fear is not a great motivator for you or your team, but is something rather to be overcome. The second myth: Your mindset as a leader doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you get results. Well, the truth is your team or organization goes where your mindset as a leader goes, for better or for worse. Your mindset as a leader during times of success, and especially during times of crisis, draws a direct line to your future. Research by the National Science Foundation shows that the average person thinks 60,000 thoughts a day. And 80%, yes, 80% of those thoughts on a good day are negative and fear-based. And according to one study published in the Harvard Business Review, CEOs identified over 500 negative consequences that resulted from decisions made with a fear-based mindset. If your mindset is positive, then you can expect generally positive and successful outcomes. But if your mindset is fear-based, especially if you don't realize it, my friends, you will make decisions that will take your team or organization into the exact fear-based death spiral that most CEOs and top leaders default into, that severely cripples or even destroys their team or organization. All right, let's take a look at the third myth. How you feel about yourself does not impact the way you lead. Well, the truth is, your level of self-worth dramatically impacts the way you lead. In the over 2 decades since we've worked with CEOs and top leaders of small to Fortune 500 companies in almost every industry around the world, we've found that the one thing that determines a leader's effectiveness starts not with how many leadership skills or tactics they may know, but their level of self-worth. In other words, how they feel about themselves. How much a leader accepts their inherent worth and values themselves, not in an arrogant way, but in a humble way, makes the single biggest impact on if they are able to build, grow, and lead others with freedom or fear. The reality is, with the right guidance and coaching, many leaders can transcend the trap of fear-based leadership that stems from low self-worth thinking and leads to ineffective leadership. Leaders can and must learn how to lead themselves and others from a place of high self-worth so they can cut out the drama and instead achieve remarkable results together. Myth number 4, command and control is the most effective model of organizational design, especially during times of rapid growth or crisis. Well, the truth is, the most robust, agile, and effective model of design is organizational democracy, not command and control. I spent a decade researching and identifying the 10 principles that comprise organizational democracy, the optimal design structure that allows leaders and their teams to build, grow, scale, and flex with bottom line success over the long term. What are the 10 principles? The WorldBlu 10 principles of organizational democracy are purpose and vision, transparency, dialogue and listening, accountability, choice, individual and collective, fairness and dignity, integrity, decentralization, and reflection and evaluation. These 10 principles comprise the 10 principles of organizational democracy. When leaders consciously and intentionally design their teams or organizations using the 10 principles of organizational democracy, rather than command and control or quasi-command and control structures, they're able to move much more quickly and efficiently, outperforming their competitors and surviving recessions with their healthy culture intact. However, our natural reaction as leaders in times of challenge and crisis is to go into command and control mode out of fear and shrink, downsize, slash, and burn. We're seeing that right now. But this can often do more harm than good to a team or organization, damaging morale, your organizational reputation, and putting even more stress on everyone. Instead, what top leaders must do is learn how to structure their organizations more democratically so they and their employees can respond more quickly and effectively to opportunities and challenges. Let me give you an example of how organizational democracy saved an Austin, Texas-based advertising agency. During the Great Recession, in February of 2009, the Stanford Bank was seized by the SEC, and shortly thereafter, it was revealed that there was $19 billion missing from the bank. Shockingly, 100% of this company's savings, enough to cover 2 years of operation with not a dime of customer revenue, completely vanished overnight. They had no money for payroll, for overhead, or to pay their suppliers. What should have forced them to close their doors or to set them back by 8 years turned out to be a fairly small blip. They attribute this 100% to their democratic design. Because of the trust they already had due to their democratic design, their CEO used open book management, which enabled their entire team to see their financial position in real time, make key decisions together, and innovate quickly. In the end, they didn't lose or have to lay off a single member of their team, were able to navigate the challenges with little impact to the business, and just 1 year later, their company was healthier than it ever was before. All right, the fifth myth. More freedom in the workplace isn't a strategy for bottom line growth. The truth is, companies that have more freedom and less fear vastly outperform compared to the S&P 500. Take a look at this chart. According to an independent analysis, companies that practice the proven freedom at work model achieved on average 7 times greater revenue growth over a 3-year period compared to S&P 500 companies. In other words, WorldBlu members achieved a staggering 103% revenue growth rate compared to S&P 500 companies, which only achieved a 15% revenue growth rate during the same 3-year period, which was right during the Great Recession. So WorldBlu companies that practice freedom at work have on average 700% or 7 times greater revenue growth compared to the S&P 500. Pretty impressive. All right, myth number 6, traditional command and control designed organizations are more resilient during a pandemic or recession. Well, the truth is, companies designed based on the 10 principles of organizational democracy are actually much more resilient during a crisis. Over 10% of companies, that's over 340,000 companies in the US alone, failed during the Great Recession of 2008. And our members, those that practice freedom at work, didn't. In fact, companies that practice freedom at work had a 95% survival rate during the last Great Recession. Let's take a look at this chart. Again, during the Great Recession, the last one in 2008, over 10% of companies in the US alone failed, meaning they went out of business, whereas WorldBlu companies practicing the freedom at work model had only a 4.6% exit rate, proving to be much more resilient during challenging economic times like those we're in right now. In short, 95% of WorldBlu clients practicing the freedom at work system survived the Great Recession. And the last myth, the way leaders design their organizations doesn't impact the level of freedom and democracy in the world. Well, the truth is, the way leaders design their organizations massively impacts the level of freedom and democracy in our world. While democracy is a concept that has been around for thousands of years, the widespread practice of it in our businesses, schools, governments, sports teams, religious organizations, and more only started to really take root globally since the end of World War II, which was just 75 years ago, not that long ago. However, democracy is now under massive threat worldwide. We continue to see the rise of authoritarian practices throughout our world, trying to control people through technology, laws, drugs, economic systems, pandemics, surveillance, man-made discords, and more. According to Freedom House, a nonpartisan, non-governmental organization that tracks the level of freedom and democracy in the world, since 2006, we have been seeing a worldwide decline in the level of democracy worldwide, including in more established democracies such as the United States. I believe, however, that leaders of organizations of all kinds, sizes, and industries can and must play a major role in advancing and stabilizing democracy and freedom in the world by consistently choosing to structure their organizations democratically and teaching their employees the skills of freedom-centered leadership. This ultimately helps people be more awake, leaders of character, who are also critical thinkers. And when leaders structure their teams and organizations based on democratic rather than fear-based and command and control principles, they help stabilize our global economies and make our communities and our world freer and more peaceful. Gretchen Spreitzer, a professor and researcher at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, quantitatively found that organizations that operate on the principles of freedom and democracy increase the level of economic prosperity, civic engagement, and peace in their communities. In short, more democracy in our organizations makes our world freer and more democratic too. The bottom line is that leading with fear at work, it doesn't work. Leading with freedom at work does. The only way to grow and lead a high-performing team or organization is if leaders consciously and intentionally choose to lead with freedom rather than fear. Leading with fear only leads to bad and short-sighted decisions that waste money, destroy morale, cripple your organization, and harm our world. The result is that you don't grow your bottom line, yourself, or your people. So instead of making the same mistakes that most CEOs and top leaders make by leading with fear and control, you can take the proven path that the very top CEOs and leaders we worked with did. It didn't implode their teams or companies, but caused them to adapt, win, and grow multiple times over, in good times and in challenging times. Now, let me give you the shortcut for how to get there that we spent 2 decades researching, testing, and developing that you can start applying to the way you lead yourself, your team, or your organization today. It's the difference between leading with freedom or leading with fear. So, what's our proven solution? Freedom at work, the leadership strategy for transforming your organization and our world. Freedom at work is the proven 3-pronged leadership strategy that teaches leaders how to lead in a way that breaks through fear so that you can achieve incredible results even during challenging times. But it comes with a warning. This is not for those of you who only want to stay on the surface, never confronting the limiting fear that is slowly killing your soul, your team, or your organization. Or those of you who are unwilling to do the hard work on yourself first, so you can then effectively lead others with freedom rather than fear. The Freedom at Work leadership model will ask you to leave behind old ways of thinking and old behaviors of fear that no longer serve you, my friend. And you must be open and willing to do this inner work, or freedom at work is not the right leadership style for you. There's a major reason why some of the world's most admired CEOs invest so much time in developing a fearless leadership style. Because you, your employees, and even those in your personal life will reap the benefits of what you put into it hundreds of times over. And if you do what my team and I spent over 2 decades researching, developing, and proving, that we have now packaged in a way that makes it faster and easier for you to implement with more clarity, certainty, less risk, and better results, you will accelerate your learning, prosper, and out-innovate your competitors, building and growing a team or organization you and your colleagues truly love. You'll become an admired example of leadership for other CEOs and top leaders, develop strong leaders throughout your organization who attract more top talent to help exponentially grow your organization. And you will reinforce a culture of trust, psychological safety, loyalty, community, and joy that benefits your employees both at work and at home. You will learn how to think and lead with a fearless rather than fearful leadership style that will transform the way you interact with others, building rock-solid relationships of trust and understanding. You will become widely respected because of the kind of fearless rather than fearful organizational culture you have created and the lives that you've touched. And new doors will open to you that you never could have dreamed of before. So, if you're the kind of CEO or top leader who wants to discover how to successfully lead with freedom at work rather than fear at work, and you're ready to discover the proven leadership model for exponentially growing yourself, your team, or your organization, WorldBlu is the community you need to join right now. Now, let's go a bit deeper into our proven leadership strategy. The Freedom at Work leadership model teaches top leaders like you how to create the optimal conditions for success for your team or organization. It's based on 3 key pillars: mindset, leadership, and design, meaning organizational design. Let's take a look at each one. Freedom-centered mindset. A freedom-centered mindset lays the foundation for thinking with freedom rather than fear in all that you do. Our Fearless Mindset course teaches leaders our proven 5-step daily practice for how to shift your mindset from fear to freedom in an instant for breakthrough results, and help others on your team do the same so you can confidently make great decisions from a mindset based in freedom rather than limiting fear. All right, the second pillar is freedom-centered leadership. Freedom-centered leadership is about leading yourself and others from a place of freedom rather than fear. The 3 core attributes of freedom-centered leadership are power, love, and Ubuntu, which help leaders develop high self-worth, love, self-knowledge, Ubuntu, and the ability to effectively self-govern, which is power. These 3 areas get at the root issues that cause most leadership success or failure. And the third pillar is freedom-centered design. Freedom-centered design is about designing your team or organization systems and processes based on the WorldBlu 10 principles of organizational democracy. Again, those proven 10 principles are purpose and vision, transparency, dialogue and listening, accountability, choice, the balance of the individual and the collective, fairness and dignity, integrity, decentralization, and reflection and evaluation. This remarkable and comprehensive system of democratic principles, when fully implemented, gives power to your people in a way that unleashes human potential, allows you to scale rapidly, and achieve breakthrough results. WorldBlu certified freedom-centered organizations choose organizational democracy as their model of organizational design. And as a result, they make more money, they outperform their competitors, and are more sustainable during a crisis or recession. They make wiser and more efficient use of their resources, innovate and execute with speed, and create a culture people love. Let me give you an example. This company is called DreamHost. They're a WorldBlu certified freedom-centered company based in LA. And using the Freedom at Work model, they took their spinoff and they took it from a $0 to $175 million sale in just 2 years. Let's hear what Dallas Kashuba, the co-founder of DreamHost, had to say. He said, when we started DreamHost in 1997, we knew immediately that the traditional top-down command and control style of management wasn't going to work for us. We wanted to give our team a voice and a say in the direction of the company. We had created a Freedom Center workplace before we even realized that there was a name for it. Those values carried through to our founding of a spin-off company called Inktank in 2012. We infused WorldBlu's 10 principles of organizational democracy into our shared thoughts on leadership, organizational design, and employee participation from the very beginning, and it paid off in a big way. Just 2 years after its inception, Inktank was purchased by Red Hat for $175 million. We saw firsthand that a culture built on trust, freedom, and a shared vision can have incredible value, and so did the 200 people who benefited financially from the sale. The proven Freedom at Work leadership model is based on timeless, timely, and proven principles rather than one-size-fits-all best practices, not a cult of personality or the latest management fads based on a handful of unicorn organizations. Now, my personal journey to discovering the Freedom at Work leadership model began back in the fall of 1996 through an opportunity that I never saw coming. That radically changed my life and allowed me to fulfill my purpose. I was in my last year of college, and I had been selected by our college president to be the director of our student-run public affairs conference. I invited my highly ambitious student team to come up with a topic for the event that would be out of the box, consciousness raising, and forward thinking. After months of research, they came back to me and proposed ceremoniously that the theme of the conference should be democracy. My jaw dropped to the ground in disbelief. Democracy is about voting and old white guys in politics in Washington, D.C., I said to them, stunned. What part of forward thinking did they not understand? They asked me to hear them out, so I listened. They started to explain to me that democracy, contrary to common belief, wasn't political. Democracy is a way of organizing people to govern themselves so they can realize their fullest potential. Democracy is the framework for freedom, applicable to how we can lead and design any organization, from businesses to schools, governments to religious institutions, sports teams to communities. What they shared with me began to click with me on a deeper, purpose-driven level. Suddenly, I remembered back to when I was in elementary school. When I was in 4th grade, age 9, I would take appointments with my fellow classmates during recess, counseling them one-on-one at the back fence about how they could live their fullest potential in their lives. Yeah, I was pretty weird. I knew at that young age that helping others live their greatness was my purpose for my life. Also, I was raised on a spiritual and religious path that taught me that we all have worth and are all deeply valued. I grew up believing that freedom and the opportunity to realize our fullest potential is our sacred divine right. Slowly, the dots started connecting for me from the purpose I discovered for myself at a young age to the conversation we were having on democracy now in college. How can you realize your fullest potential in an environment of fear and control, I wondered. You can't. You can only realize your fullest potential in an environment of freedom. And what is the framework for freedom? Democracy. So I said yes to the conference that would change, or rather point me on the path for my life, the path to freedom at work. It was then that I began an in-depth study to uncover the principles of democracy. From that point forward, I spent over a decade researching what democracy is, looking deeper than the practices that we often associate with it, discovering the 10 principles that make democracy uniquely democracy. My journey has been deeply rewarding and at times surprising. taking me around the world, meeting incredible people, leaders, and organizations. As I've grappled with the timeless concepts of freedom and democracy, I've come to believe that if we could just understand the principles of democracy better, and again, I'm not talking about politics here, I'm talking about democracy as a proven system of organizational design. This understanding, if we just understood it, would transform the way we think, lead, and design just about everything in our world for the better. I've devoted my life to building WorldBlu in order to teach top leaders like you freedom at work, because I believe to the core of my being that it is our sacred right to be able to live, lead, and work in freedom rather than fear. And I strongly believe this is a message for CEOs and top leaders in every industry around the world, from small to Fortune 500 companies, from our schools to our religious organizations, from nonprofits to our governments. It is also for anyone who wants to see more freedom and less fear in the world, regardless of your position or title. For over 2 decades, I've had the privilege of working with my team, with hundreds of top CEOs and leaders around the world in over 100 countries, in all different industries, leading the way with more freedom and less fear in our organizations, transforming individual lives and our world for the better. By codifying what we've learned into the Freedom at Work leadership model, our goal is to make it faster and easier for you to close the gap from where you are to where you want to be, with more freedom and less fear. That's how you close that gap, my friends. After all, what is it that really keeps us from closing this gap from fear to freedom in the way we think, lead, work, and live? It's the enemy within that tries to tell us to be afraid, that we aren't good enough, that we don't have worth, and that other people don't either. This is what drives the worst forms of leadership, evidenced as increasing levels of control, authoritarianism, and fear-based leadership that tramples upon the human soul, making us afraid and limiting our ability to reach our fullest potential, promise, and purpose. But when we realize that we can defeat fear, reclaim our sense of worth, and lead ourselves and others with freedom instead, we become unstoppable in the results we can achieve. Why? Because it is our sacred right to be free, not afraid. And when we lead ourselves with freedom rather than fear, it has a massive ripple effect on every part of our life. What does it look like? Well, as a leader of a team or organization, you can go to bed at night knowing that you don't have to wake up the next morning to a bunch of drama because you work with people who really care about each other. Your colleagues recruit their friends, and so you spend less money on headhunting and gimmicky retention perks. And you are in love with your team and the organization you helped create. When you're leading yourself and others with freedom rather than fear, this impacts your family too. You come home from work feeling energized rather than feeling spent. And you have the extra mental and physical energy to fully engage with the people you love. You have the tools and skills to have healthier relationships with your partner, spouse, children, and other members of your family. There's a greater sense of harmony, clarity of purpose, and overall well-being in your life. You feel a deep sense of joy and meaning. And I know this from my own life. You are also highly respected in your community as a leader. You are involved, donating your time and resources to helping others. You help open doors for others that were once closed. And when you see your colleagues out in your community, you don't run and hide from each other, but you say hi and even plan activities together outside of work. Your stand for leading with freedom rather than fear links you into a beautiful tapestry with other top leaders worldwide who understand that democracy takes eternal vigilance and are also committed to standing up for freedom in small and big ways each and every day. Why is freedom at work so urgently needed and relevant for our world right now? Because we live in a time of increasing fear-based leadership in every area of our lives. We see it in the way leaders around the world are leading with fear and control in every industry, rather than with freedom, with accountability. We see it in the unfair and unjust systems and processes that don't treat everyone with dignity and respect. And we see it in our own lives, evidenced as a lack of feeling like we are reaching our fullest potential, living our true purpose, and loving who we are. There will always be so-called leaders who will try to control others, who want all the power, and who, because of the enemy within, will treat others as if they don't have inherent worth. You only have to check the news each day to see examples of fear-based leaders all over the world trying to create more confusion and division in our world with fear. But the reality is, since freedom is our sacred right, while the path may not always be a straight line, I believe freedom is inevitable. The human spirit has, throughout human history, continued to throw off the shackles of fear and oppression and keep the light burning within each one of us. While new vehicles for control will always be popping up, if more and more of us can consciously and intentionally choose to lead ourselves, our teams, and our organizations with freedom and accountability rather than fear and control, we can truly transform our world for the better. And if our message of freedom at work resonates with the way you want to lead, I invite you to become a member of WorldBlu today. Membership is open to anyone who wants to lead themselves and others from a place of freedom rather than fear. So today, my friend, you are presented with a choice. Will you have the courage to lead with freedom at work or fear at work? Will you join a top global community of leaders committed to leading with freedom, transforming their lives, their teams, and their organizations, unleashing human potential, and experiencing exponential growth? Or will you continue to creep along in fear? Remember, the top CEOs and leaders we've worked with around the world have proven that leading with freedom rather than fear and control is the most effective leadership strategy for personal growth, leadership development, and organizational design that wins during challenging times while changing our world for the better. I believe each and every one of us deserves to live, lead, and work in freedom. And if you feel the same way, I invite you to let go of the fear, become a member, and discover how to lead yourself and others with freedom at work.